Hi, it's Gary Lloyd, and I'm going to do part two of the talk on the Spatulate Tools research from the Ness of Brodgar. And in the previous session, I gave you a little background. I talked about the methodology of the project, identifying spatulate tools, raw materials, and manufacture and use. Today, I'm going to talk about spatial analysis, spatial distribution across the site, talk about regional distribution. We'll draw some conclusions and talk about potential future research. So it was a little bit subjective, but I tried to take a look at the spatulate shapes and break them down into quantities for each shape type. So if we look at the images here, so we have spoon-shaped spatulas. You can see some of them are obviously spoon-shaped, some less so, and some fragments. Then we have the handle shapes. Once again, some are obviously handle-shaped, and some less so. Then I have pebbles. And then I've got another category that includes blocks along the top, a couple of chisel-shaped ones, triangular, and then cobbles, which I just identified as being slightly larger than the pebbles, but some similar shapes. So if I chart it and we take a look at the amounts of each type, the largest category was pebble, then spoon-shaped, handle, cobbles, blocks, triangles, blanks, and chisels. So we've got an idea of the amount and quantities of each of the shapes, though, as I said, it's a bit subjective, and I could argue, even with myself, that maybe one or two should be put in this category or that category, but regardless, I just wanted to get an idea of how many there were. Then I took a look at the site itself. You can see the entire site on the left-hand side here. Trench J, though I don't see Trench X in this, so it's I believe from 2015 or 16 again. But it's got Trench J, Trench P, the main trench, and Trench T, and then some of the smaller ones. And then on the right-hand side, I have a close-up of Trench P with each of the structures. And I've set this up so it's kind of like a database, and I can, for example, let's take a look at all of the artifacts from Trench J. And there they are. Go back, and we can look at structure 12, for example. And we got some cobbles, some handle shapes. This nice one that we looked at the other day and a little bit closer, and some pebble and cobble shaped. And look at structure 10. Once again, a little bit of a variety. Here's a broken spoon-shaped one. So this one is kind of interesting. If we zoom in here and take a closer look, you see the chipping and a little bit of grinding across the surface there. But unlike many of the other spatulate tools, this one appears to be burned. So I don't know that we've seen any evidence of burning on the spatulate tools other than this one. And then we'll look at structure 8. Okay, so the thing that kind of jumps out a little bit about structure 8 is all of these spoon-shaped. Broken one here, there's a broken one here, and then these almost complete and complete spoon-shaped ones. So if we chart the different shapes across the site, trench J on the left here, trench P in the middle, trench T and trench X, and then all of the structure numbers along the bottom of the chart here. And the blanks just mean that there was either no structure identified, or it was found, excuse me, the artifact was found in the large samples taken. So it was found after large samples were taken and recovered in processing the samples. So anyway, so we'll take a look at this, and we see that the majority of the sample or the artifacts are within structures, the exception being the central midden area here. And then within the structures themselves, the spoon-shaped seem to predominantly be in structure 8, as we saw, 10, and 12. So overall, I think we can say that the spatulas are distributed across the site, both within structures and within midden areas. The central midden here, there were some midden areas in T and midden areas in trench X that some of these artifacts were recovered. But we can also say that artifacts are more prevalent in structure 8. Structure 8 is kind of a unique structure. It's got a large number of hearths and stalls. A large number of decorated stones were recovered from structure 8, and some evidence of painted walls. And it's kind of been suggested that structure 8 may have had a special function. What special function that is, we're not quite sure. However, the presence of a large number of spatulate tools in structure 8 suggests maybe they were special too, especially all of the spoon-shaped spatulas. So I decided to take another look and see if anything popped out by looking at the manufacturing technique. As we talked about in part 1, there are essentially 2 techniques used to manufacture the spatulate tools. The expedient technique involves essentially shaping the tool through use as a tool, and then strategic design, which involves taking a cobble, pebble, or rock and making it into a desired shape. So designing the shape rather than shaping it from use. So if we look at the overall, look at all the spatulas, we can see that almost half of them, and this pie chart here shows that about half of them are strategic design, about a quarter are expedient design, and then there are about a quarter or so that are either blanks or preforms or pebbles or preforms with very little wear on them, and it's difficult to see whether, if they were used as tools or if they were intended as blanks to create strategically designed spatula tools. So anyway, if we take a look at the distribution across the site by manufacturing technique, we can see that the blue are blanks and preforms, fairly well distributed across the site. Expedient Trench J, few of the structures in Trench P, in Central Midden area, and T and X. But if we look at the strategically designed spatulate tools, yeah, we can see quite a few in the Central Midden area. Those are primarily broken, fragmentary spatulate tools. However, once again, if we look at structure 8, we can see that a large portion, a large share of the strategic tools are from structure 8. Once again, pointing to the unique nature of structure 8, perhaps, and another indicator that maybe something special was going on, or there's something special about structure 8. So outside of the site, I took a look at the Orkney region, if you will, and tried to find evidence of both simple or expediently designed spatulate tools, and then the more complex, strategically designed. And so I looked at settlement sites. I didn't look at any chambered tombs. No real reason other than scope. And then secondly, and maybe more importantly, if these are indeed tools that especially the simple ones that are utility tools and just used for everyday kinds of things, then I would expect that we would more likely find them in settlement sites rather than in tombs. So the sites I looked at were across Orkney, and they included Barnhouse, Crossy Crown, Links of Notland, there's the Ness of Brodgar, Poole, Rigno and Rousey, Scarabray, Stonehall Farm, Toff's Ness, and Whiteford Hill. So Toff's Ness and Poole are both on Sanday, and then the Links of Notland are on Westray. There's, of course, Rigno and Rousey. So the way I researched this was to look both at expedition notes and excavation reports and notes to try and find evidence of spatulate tools. And in a handful of cases, I was also able to go to the museum here in Kirkwall and look through their collections to see if I could note any spatulate tools. So this is what I came up with. The dash lines are indications of possible evidence of the tools being found at that site, and then the solid arrow is confirmed evidence. So if we look at the simple spatulate tools, you can see that there's evidence of them at Poole on Sanday, and then at Crossy Crown, Whiteford Hill, and Stonehall Farm. In fact, I think I have some images here. Oh, here we go. And Barnhouse, I should say Barnhouse too. So here on the left-hand side are the examples that I was able to see in the Kirkwall Museum. Crossy Crown, Barnhouse, and then on the right-hand side, there's one from Whiteford Hill. And then in the center, though I didn't see this myself, I believe it is in the museum collection, actually on display. And this particular spatulate tool appears as though it may be a strategically designed tool rather than an expediently designed tool. Then if we look at the more complex strategically designed tools, we have, of course, we have the tools at the Ness of Brodgar. Then we also have a possible and pool. So here are some of the examples from the Ness of Brodgar along the bottom. And then here's a sketch of the one that was found at pool. As you can see, it's a fragment. It looks like it may be a handle. It flares out towards one end here. And if I superimpose it on the artifact from the Ness of Brodgar, you can see that the shape looks quite a bit like this example from the Ness of Brodgar. So for my purposes, I considered this perhaps a representation of a strategically designed, even spoon-shaped tool from Poole. And then I also have a dashed line over to Scarabray. Scarabray was excavated a number of times, but most extensively by Gordon Child in the late 1920s and 1930, maybe 1931. And there were a huge number of artifacts recovered. Unfortunately, those artifacts are scattered amongst museums and private collections. And there's some in Stromness, there's some in the British Museum, there's some in the National Museums of Scotland, and some in private collections. I believe there's some at scale. So it was really difficult to try and track these down. However, Child kept extensive notes, and those notes have been digitized, and was able to get copies of his field notes from the excavation. And combing through those, I found a couple of interesting references to some finds. He does refer to a large number of bone spatulas, but he also has one reference to a stone spatula. And then he has another reference, which I thought was really, really interesting, to he called it a milled stone spoon. So stone, it was milled or ground, and it's spoon-shaped. So I would love to get my hands on that and take a look at it, but it sure seems like it may be a evidence of another stone spoon-shaped spatulate tool, and this was at Scarabray. So let me try and wrap all of what I've talked about in the first part of the talk and the second part. So we've seen that the spatulate tools are primarily local material, siltstone. It appears there's two methods of manufacture: a simple, probably expedient design, which the tools are shaped through use, and then there's a more complex strategic design in which the tools are made to a shape rather than shaped through use. There's little evidence of use wear on the complex strategic tool form, and their use is still in question. At the Ness of Brodgar, spatulas are distributed across the site, though Structure 8 has a higher concentration of not only the spoon shape, but also strategically designed tool types. There are definitely the simple or expediently designed tools at other sites in the region. And there also may be some complex or strategically designed tools present at other sites, i.e. Barnhouse, Poole, and of course the reference by Child at Scarabray. So as is often the case when we go into research these things in archaeology, that we generate more questions than we have answers. So I've got a few things down here for potential future research. Um, I think a microscopic analysis of the tool needs to be done. I had a fairly short period of time to look at the tools and analyze them, and I did that through taking digital images, and I could blow up those images and look for evidence of use, wear, and foreign substances. However, I believe we would have some benefit from looking at these tools under a microscope and trying to see evidence of use, wear, and foreign substances that way. I think also need to research analogs. There's ethnographic evidence of bone and wood spatulas, and certainly evidence of the way those were used. We could see if there were any correlations between those analogs and the stone spatulas at the Ness of Brodgar. I think we also need to determine if there's some correlation with the spoon-shaped and the strategically designed tools with structure 8. I think you need to do a temporal analysis. That is, the site was active for, as we said the other day, almost 1,000 years. And I didn't do any research on the dating of the tools and whether or not they were all from the same stratigraphic levels, the same dating regime, or if they were spread out throughout the use of the site. So I think that needs to be taken, a look needs to be taken at that. I think we need to do a wider investigation beyond just Neolithic settlement sites and outside of Orkney, and beyond just the Neolithic, maybe look at Bronze Age and even Iron Age to see if there's any evidence of stone spatulas. And then finally, I think that we need to do some experimental archaeology and perhaps manufacture some of these and use them in different tasks to see how fragile they were and what kinds of things you could use them for. So that's essentially the end of my talk. I've got a list of my references here, and while I have those up, I just want to take the time to thank Nick Card and Ann Mitchell for not only encouraging me to do this research, but also for giving me access to all of these fantastic artifacts. And being able to do that, I think, has been a real treat. And then finally, let me point you to the Ness of Brodgar website, where you can find a lot about the interesting things we're doing there. I should also mention that we're not digging this year for obvious reasons. We will be back next year, and most of our funding comes through donations. And if you're so inclined, there's a place for you to donate on the website. Thanks for listening, and hope to see you next year at the Ness of Brodgar.